If your executive condominium have reached the 5-year MOP and you are wondering when is the best time to sell, watch this video. Now let's take a look at this news by Business Times. It shows that ECs are still a winning proposition for buyers. So in summary, this news mentioned that EC prices are lower and prices lag behind private property prices. But of course, for a few reasons. Number one, EC lands are subsidized by the government, but also people buying into EC are subjected to restrictive buying conditions like your mortgage servicing ratio, which is your MSR, and also income ceiling as well. But because of this, it creates an affordable pricing for more space. So with the same price compared to a private property, they can actually own a bigger unit in the EC segment. So of course, lastly, we all know that EC properties actually have a very high potential of making profits when they MOP or even years after MOP, and that's why owning an EC is very popular in Singapore. So in this article, take a look at the numbers of owners sold and how much they profited. But if you realize that the amount of profit varies, and that is likely based on the size of the unit and also the time that they exit the development as well. So you can see from here, a very small group of people profited less than 100,000. Most of them actually make more than 200, 300,000, 500,000, or even up to $1 million of profit as well. Of course, this can't be all wonderful because you're owning one of the most affordable condo in Singapore, and of course, there are some trade-offs when you're owning a property like this. So one of them is actually the 5-year MOP to sell. So let's say, for example, if you're a first-time buyer that bought the EC on the launch day, you have to wait for about maybe 3 to 5 years of building period, and then upon the key collection or TOP of the condo, you have to wait for another 5 years for the MOP before you can sell. So even though you're getting a huge profit, but from day 1 till the day that you can sell is probably 5 to 9 years horizon. So the trade-off for this profit is actually time. Hi, I'm Zacson and I recently just sold 2 3-bedrooms, one at Criterion at Yishun, another one at Visionaire at Canberra. And I realized that the very first question that my owners or my sellers actually ask me is Zacson, when is the best time to sell? So through this video, I'm going to share with you a bit of my thought process and also some of my opinions and suggestions, and hopefully through these, you are able to gain more clarity and know what you can do next from here. Alright, so the content for today. Number one, I'll deep dive into some of the data to understand the past EC trends, and also to go through some of the key considerations that you should have prior to selling your EC, and then the options that you have, but the pros and cons between them, and ultimately the last point will be my recommendations. If you have any friends or family that own an EC and you think that this video will definitely help them, do like and share this video. Okay, so now back to the topic of this video, when is the best time to sell an EC? Now let's dive into some data for past trends of some of the EC. Let's go. So I found some data in the north, in the east, and in the west as well, so that I can cater to as many of you as possible. So number one, over here we have our Blossom Residences, which is located at Bukit Panjang. Currently, top profit in Blossom Residences is at 795,000. So take a look at the chart over here. You can see that upon the launch till the MOP, it grew about 29%, and for following about 1 year plus, it grew 8.26%, and after the COVID outbreak, you can see that they grew to 29.7%. So based on this chart, if you ask me when was the biggest growth in Blossom Residences, will definitely be after the COVID outbreak. And today, if you're someone owning Blossom Residences, the 795,000 profit might be you. Now this is at Punggol Twin Waterfall, top profit as of now 748,000. So from launch to MOP, about 15% growth, slightly lesser than Blossom Residences. And from then, MOP onwards, it has been growing consistently and grew up to 32% in terms of profit as well. So for Blossom Residences and Twin Waterfall, they have MOP for quite a few years. So today here I have an example, the Criterion at Yishun. I think we just MOP this year. So you can see from launch day to MOP, they actually grew 41%, which is a huge difference between Blossom and Twin Waterfall. But if you realize on February 2023, when they MOP till June 2023, they have a spike in terms of growth of 14%. But from last year, June 2023 till today, the growth have been stagnant and actually have a negative 0.08% in terms of growth. So for Criterion, it seems that it reached a stagnant in terms of growth. So this is something that we really need to look into and consider as well. So the growth of the development varies between location, timing, and also in terms of market sentiment as well. So I prepared something that's slightly more interesting. I found an EC that was way older, launched way before COVID, before our 2013 cooling measure, to take a look how actually EC property have performed over the years. Now, this is Lilydale in Yishun. So basically, the launch period was about December 2001. You can see from the launch period till the MOP, they grew 34.84%. But unlike the other examples that I show you guys, that upon MOP, the prices didn't actually go up, but it went down for about negative 6.5%. But then shortly in 2009, June, it started to climb back again and grow by 76%. But then you realize in 2013, it started to dip in terms of prices over the span of about 7 years. It actually dropped, or the price was corrected by about 18%. And then from there, same thing, COVID outbreak. As of now, the prices actually grew 49%. When looking at charts like this, we need to understand what caused the prices to go up and down like this. Usually when the prices go up, it means that either the private property prices have went up, that's why the EC prices got to follow as well. And whenever prices start to be corrected or to drop in terms of the profit or the resale price, usually there's something that's happening, either external or there's any policy change as well. So I've also prepared another chart over here to show you that if I were to put the world events and also cooling measure implemented by our government, you can realize that the prices actually shifted. So if you realize in 2013, what was the reason for Lilydale prices to be corrected or to drop is because there was multiple cooling measures that were implemented before that, and the biggest one is of course our TDSR, total debt servicing ratio, and in between we also have huge world events as well. If I were to fast forward in between June 2019 and April 2020, what causes the price to increase up to 49.2% was actually the COVID outbreak, which is the world event over here. So as we go after COVID outbreak, the government have been trying to slow down a bit of such growth by implementing up to 4 cooling measures over here, and in between we also have other world events as well. So based on these, Lilydale owners that actually bought during 2001, 2013, you will realize that you are actually recovering in terms of your pricing, and this might be a good time for you to sell. So in summary, EC will continue to grow after the 5-year MOP mark, and the best time to sell is only when you're very clear on your next property or you're very clear on what you're going to buy next. And especially if you're someone that are looking at more growth, then you really have to spot something that is worth shifting to. Now let's head into the key considerations that you need to take note of before selling off your EC. Firstly, your age, which what I mean by time. So for example, today, if you are 35 years old, this is basically your last chance to leverage on a 30 years full loan tenure. So for example, at a 1.5 million new purchase price at a 30 years loan tenure, versus if today you become 45 years old and you're only left with 20 years loan tenure, what's the difference? So for example, if today a combined income of 10K, or as an individual you have a 10K income, age 35 years old, let's base on the floor rate in terms of loan assessment of 4%, you can actually loan up to 1.152 million for your private property purchase. But in comparison, if you are 45 years old and you have a combined income of $10,000, for private property, you are only able to loan $907,000. Also, let's take a look at the impact of the loan tenure to your installment. So over here, you have 1.5 million purchase price based on fixed rate 2.9% of what we have today. 30 years loan tenure, 75% loan to value, which is about 1.125 million of loan. Your monthly repayment will be $4,683. But in comparison, if you are only having 20 years loan tenure, you can see that at 1.5 million, 2.9% fixed rate, 20-year loan tenure, 75% loan to value, your monthly repayment will be at $6,183. So a difference of about $1,500. So if you realize selling your EC or exiting to the next property is not just about how much profit you get, you also need to know that based on your age today and how much time you have to fully leverage on the 30 years loan tenure, all this will actually impact you. Firstly, if you are not able to loan as much, you definitely need to top up more cash and CPF. Number two, if your monthly installment is higher, definitely it will eat into your savings every month from your income, and this will make your move an even harder decision to make. So another thing for you to take note, if you are someone that is reaching 55 years old, which is the age that you will need to fulfill your basic retirement sum to your CPF, this will definitely lock away a significant amount from your OA into your BRS, and that will decrease your down payment that you're able to use for your next housing. So all in all, your age will definitely be a huge factor that will affect your next purchase, so do take note of this. So the next consideration will be your income and your career growth. So you really need to understand your income and also the projection of your career as well. If you foresee your income to increase over the years, and that will be something that you will be anticipating, so upgrading to a bigger one of a higher quantum will definitely be something that you can consider. But if your income is not going to grow, or you're going to be at the same job, same position for the years later, so maybe staying at a status quo will be a good idea. Next will be your family needs. So are you a couple with family, with kids? Are you bringing along your kids or your parents along for your next housing? Currently, do you expect any new members coming into your family, or you're just going to maintain as a couple throughout the years? So this is very important, is because, example, if you have kids coming in and you're preparing for their primary school, their secondary school, definitely location will be a huge factor to you, and we can't just possibly move around like that. And one thing, let's say if you're moving in with your parents, or your parents are moving in, or your parents are staying nearby you, and then shifting out too far away will not be the ideal situation as well. So when planning this, for example, back then due to income, you're only able to get a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom compact. But currently, you are expecting a newborn, another kid coming to your family, or bringing in your parents to take care of them. Probably you will need to consider whether to move to a 3-bedroom premium or 4-bedroom to house your family as well. But of course, we have to also check on your affordability on this. Timeline. Timeline is one of the most important considerations when doing this move, is because that the last thing we want is for you to sell your place and you do not have a very clear plan of where you're going to stay. So if you do not plan your timeline properly and you do not transit to your next property smoothly, you might end up having no place to stay. So regardless whether you are downsizing to a HDB, you are shifting to condo within the same condo, or you're buying a new build, preparing to rent for 1 or 2 years before collecting keys for your new build, all these things got to be planned ahead. The last consideration, which is something that a lot of people don't think about or discuss about, is your end goal. To me, the end goal will be how much you need to retire comfortably. So now let's take a look at this calculation. For someone to retire comfortably today, the expenses that you will need roughly per month is 3K per pax. So for example, for the average life expectancy is about 85 years old in Singapore, and the retirement age is 63 years old. So you will need to set aside 22 years of retirement fund. For example, if I were to use 3,000 times 12 times 22 years, you will be needing 792,000 per pax. If you are a couple, then that will derive to 1.584 million. But this is excluding your traveling or any expenses for your kids, and even medical expenses as well. And also, we have not factored in things like inflation. So this amount, 1.5 million, will definitely continue to increase, and that's exactly why everybody say that real estate is to hedge against inflation. So the big question is, with your current property, if you were to continue to hold till retirement, is it enough for you to retire comfortably? If you're currently holding a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom property at about between 1 million to 1.2 million, definitely this is not enough for you to retire, because you need to understand that if 1.2 million, you were to downsize to a HDB, let's say 800,000, you're only left with 400,000, which is 1.1 million shortfall from the 1.5 million. So if you ask me, the best time to sell your EC is actually to identify the next property that can reach your end goal for you as soon as possible. Now let's run through some of the options that you have. Option 1. Sell your EC and get a HDB flat. So if you're someone that's under 55 years old, you will need to wait out 15 months before you're eligible to do so, and then that will definitely incur some of the rental costs. So this is something that you really need to take note. But of course, if you're a family that is 55 years old and above, then you're able to right size to a 4-room HDB flat or smaller. But before we do this, we really need to understand, have you reached your end goal yet, or have you already achieved what you need for your end goal, which is the $1.5 million. As we know, whatever property that we own, sooner or later we will fully pay the property. So the question is, would you rather fully pay a 1.5 million condo or fully pay 600,000 HDB? Option 2, which is very popular for EC owners, which is decouple. So basically, one of the owner to keep the EC and the other party will exit this property to buy another. So this whole calculation will take up one whole video. If you really want to understand and wish to learn more about decouple, do leave a comment below. And if I have enough response, I'll definitely consider doing a full video like this. If not, you can just PM me and I'll run through some calculations with you. Some pointers for decoupling before you proceed. Number one, the person buying over the other share have to fulfill the TDSR, which means that the income must be enough to take a new loan for the new market value of the property from the owner that's going to exit. The next pointer will be there will be a restart of the seller's stamp duty for the portion that you buy over, which is 3 years for now. For the owner that's exiting this property, make sure that you have done up your in-principle approval with a bank to make sure that you're eligible to loan enough for your next purchase. The last thing you want is to decouple and you realize that you can't loan enough for the next one. Option 3. Sell one, buy one bigger private or even a landed property as well. For this, is very straightforward and I think is one of the easiest to manage, basically from a 2-bed to a 3-bed, 3-bed to 4-bed, maybe a 4-bed to a landed property or something nearer to the central. As we know, most of the ECs are located in the outskirts. So for this, you really need to take note of the timeline. You need to make sure that the extension is required for your selling so that you can transit smoothly to your next house, and even you can buy some time to renovate your new place as well. So the next property that you find, if they require extension as well, then you definitely need to calculate the additional cost of renting a place while waiting for this transition to happen. And all these additional costs should be avoided or calculated as early as possible so that we know what is the exact and best price to buy for your next property. Option 4, everybody's dream. Sell one, buy two. Same thing, make sure financial all done, IPA done for both down payment calculated properly that you can afford both. This is suitable for couple with strong income and also with very clear career progression as well. Because as we go, the last thing we want is you own two properties and end up we couldn't afford maintaining the mortgage for both of the properties. For sell and buy two, usually I'll advise that the first property is for own stay, and it's best to set aside 18 months of reserve funds, which means that today if you stop working, you still have additional money to pay for installment for a good 18 months while you wait and look out for your next job. And for the second property, I'll always advise to get a rental property or a new build. So for rental property, you have someone else to pay for the interest for your principal, so it's a very good savings plan. For new build, definitely you will leverage on the progressive payment. Your installment is very little. But of course, if you choose the right one upon clearing your seller stamp duty, you will definitely be able to see profit from there and you can roll to a bigger one. Option 5, like my seller for Criterion, they actually bought a brand new 3-bedder new launch. So over here, initially they own a 3-bedroom compact with no storeroom, basically 3 bedrooms, 1 kitchen, 1 living room, balcony, that's all. So because of the profit they got from Criterion, they are able to upgrade to this 3-bedroom over here. I'm very happy that I secured for them at a very low price, just about 2 mil. So you know that today 1033 square feet brand new property, if you average around 2k per square feet, it will cost you 2 mil already. But there are also other developments that are selling at 2.2k, 2.4k, so you'll be 2.2, 2.4 mil. So to me, I told them that the best way to go into a new property is to go for lowest per square feet as possible, because the lower you go, the more you can gain. Agree? What's the pros and cons between this? Let's talk about the pros first. They saw an inbuilt profit within the development of at least 200,000 because some of the neighbors in this development already bought 2.2 million. Some of the bigger units also transacted 2.3 million as well. So entering as $2 million, they actually have an inbuilt profit or gap to fill in the resale market about 200,000 to 300,000. Next will be progressive payment. And because of progressive payment, even though they're owning a 2 million property, but they do not have to pay the full interest of 75% loan because you only pay as it builds. And number 2, they do not need to fork up a huge sum every single month to pay for this property until the completion of the development. But of course, there are things that they need to sacrifice as well. So number 1, being a newly built, they will need to wait for 1-2 years. So either they rent for their own stay or they move back to their family. But thankfully, they are able to find accommodation, and for that, they save on their rental. Next, this is not a condo that is near any schools that they plan to put their kids in. But thankfully, their kids still a toddler. They still have a few years to plan for this. By the time they clear the 3-year SSD, they still have more than enough time to plan for the kids' schooling. For this owner, it's very clear. They are moving towards the angle which is close to a 3 million retirement amount. So going to a 2 million property can assure them that they can slowly climb and then build the capital to ultimately reach the 3 million mark as their end goal. So here are my recommendations. Firstly, before you decide to do anything, reach out to a realtor or a banker to get your finance plan out. Also seek professional advice on what's your next step. But of course, if you don't have anyone in mind, do WhatsApp me. Number two, as much as possible, choose a route that have the least opportunity cost and most importantly, have the most potential growth, regardless it's a resale or new launch. If you are a couple that have many good hustling years ahead and you have flexibility in terms of time, accommodation, do repeat the same cycle that you did for your EC property. Continue to grow your capital, continue to profit from your real estate, and ultimately you will reach your end goal faster than anyone else. If you're a family with kids and your kids are already schooling in the location that you're staying in, and this is something that you do not want to change, I can suggest that you explore shifting up to a bigger unit or bigger condo within your same development or nearby as well. There are many instances that some of my sellers actually move within the same development. Even with all these options that I've listed out, there are many variables that will change based on your income, your timeline, and your family profile. If this video is too much to digest or it's not enough for you and you really want to deep dive into details, feel free to WhatsApp me and I'm more than happy to share with you. Here's the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching throughout. I understand it's very lengthy, but it's very much needed for EC owners. So if you like what you see and what you have watched, do help me smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, and ultimately on the notification button for future videos like this. Do follow my socials for more updates as well. See you!